on Wisdom of the Veda at the Theosophical Society, Detroit, 28th September 1979. Talk by MP Pandit.
भद्रं कर्णेभिः शृणुयाम देवाः भद्रं पश्येमक्षभिर्यजत्राः स्थिरैरङ्गैस्तुष्टुवांसः तनूभिर्व्यशेम देवहितं यदायुः शांति शांति शांति. Let us hear with our ears what is auspicious. Let us behold with our eyes what is auspicious. May we spend the God-allotted span of our life with firm-limbed bodies, praising the gods. Peace to the mind, peace to the life energies, peace to the physical body. This is one of the peace chants of an ancient culture dating from the Vedas, whose characteristic approach to life, nature, God is very positive. There is an ancient story how a young boy was seized with the desire to know the eternal. He approaches his father, who was a sage, and asks him, "Father, I wish to know the eternal, the reality." The father nods approvingly and says, "Go and find out that from which all things are born, by which they are sustained, and into which they pass in their ending." The boy follows the directions, and after some time he returns to his father with a beaming face and tells him, "Father, I have found the eternal." The father looks at him questioningly, and the boy answers, "Food, matter. Matter is the eternal, because from matter indeed all things take shape. By matter they are sustained, and into the universal substance of matter all things pass." The father pauses for a while and tells, "Go and concentrate further." The boy obeys, does likewise, and comes after some time and tells his father, "Father, I have found the eternal." Life force is the eternal, because it is from life force that all things come into being, by life energy all are maintained, and into the universal ocean of life energy all pass in their ending. The father nods and tells him, go and concentrate further. 3 times the boy goes back, and each time he comes and announces his discovery. And his discoveries are: matter is eternal, life force is eternal, mind is the eternal, knowledge is the eternal, bliss is the eternal. This characteristic legend underlines the discovery of the Vedic period people that God, the Spirit, the divine reality is not there alone, is not only in the soul or the spirit. God is manifest here as matter, as life, as mind, as knowledge, and as bliss. That is, the entire universe at all levels of existence is permeated, maintained, and pervaded, developed by the divine spirit. There is nothing that is not the divine reality. The divine reality is all pervading. There is no fissure in that reality. What the later philosophers call Maya, the power of illusion, the power of cunning, is only a misunderstanding of a power of God, which is His own power, which is defined in the Veda as the power of the self, which finitizes the infinite, which measures the immeasurable. There is a power in the spirit which brings out into manifestation in so many innumerable forms what is formless, measures out in unities, finites, what is infinite. And that power, they say, the seers beheld that power in the concentration of their ascesis. It cannot be beheld by the physical eye, but by the inner eye. In the scheme of the Vedas or the mystics that derive from the Vedas, the whole is one scheme. Matter, nature, man, the divine. It is one reality, one truth. And the Vedas are really not records, not something written by the intellectual mind of man. What we have today as the hymns of the Veda are but fragments of a tradition, of a legacy, which is past history, prehistory, of a great people, of an ancient people, whose lives are not recorded, but the remnants of whose civilization have been preserved in some hymns, hardly 10,000 of them, which have been collected together. And they give clues to the history of man, not only in India, but in Asia, in Europe, and elsewhere. Those simple people were like any other simple people, those of Egypt, those of Greece, those of other Mediterranean countries who had an intuitive perceptions. Their minds were not intellectually developed as of the peoples to come, say, 10,000 years later. They beheld in nature where they lived a presence, great presences behind everything that they saw, behind the trees, behind the crops, behind the winds and the rains and the sun. They responded to some presences, some powers, imperceptible, but nonetheless they could feel their presence. And these powers they called gods, deities, goddesses. So over every natural phenomenon like wind, rain, the sun, the moon, they perceived the existence of a power, of a god, and they worshipped them out of adoration, out of humility. And what is curious about these gods is that they were not simply nature powers worshipped by primitive people, as many Western scholars would have us believe, but they were also psychological powers, powers presiding over psychological movements in the being of man. And they had a whole pantheon. Each god had, in the universal aspect, an authority over a particular movement in physical nature. Psychologically, he governed those qualities, those powers, those faculties in each individual. In the microcosm as well as in the macrocosm, the gods were not independent deities, polytheistic powers, but powers and personalities of one God. They say expressly, the reality is one, the existent is one. The wise ones call him variously, according to the powers, according to the functions, according to which role each god occupied. They were called and they were worshipped. And there was a method. The first god whom these mystics worshipped, and even today we, the descendants of these mystics in India, worship, is the god of fire, the mystic flame. And this flame was symbolized to the commonality of people, to the generality of men, by lighting a fire on fuel on a wooden platform. The fire was lit, and in the fire some oblations were offered, and the people believed that they reached the gods and got the blessings. But to the initiate, it had quite a different meaning. When the fire is lit, when the candle is lit, it means that the inner aspiration for the higher reality, higher consciousness is lit in the heart of man. The heart of man is the Veda, the platform on which the cosmic fire is lit. Fire represents an ascending movement. It goes up and up. It carries the offerings of man to the gods. And the offerings that are offered are things which man has to do in daily life. Is food. Food means the material side of life. He praises, his words, they represent the psychological side. And the drink that man offers to the gods, which is carried by the mystic flame, it is called the wine. But this wine is not what is pressed out from mushrooms or from some hill plants, which scholars are at pains to find out and identify. It is the essence of life, the essence of life experience. That is offered to gods by man. And the gods accept that offering. And they respond by growing in man. This is called the birth of gods in man. The birth of gods in man means the awakening of the particular psychological powers that are represented by God, that God. Thus, Agni, the mystic flame, is lit. He is called the messenger of the gods. He is called the mouth of the gods, through which the gods accept the offering. He is called the captain of the march. He is also called the immortal guest, present in house and house. In each person there is that immortal presence, the aspiration, the flame to rise from the human to the divine level. And when the offering is put, it is the flame that rises heavenward and calls first the God of heaven. The God of heaven, who is called Indra. Indra is the divine mind. Above the human mind with its errorful knowledge, there is a level of divine mind where there is illumination, where there is force and will, and that God responds. Indra is the God of the divine mind, the divine intelligence, who lights up the corridors of the human being, and he wields the thunderbolt. The thunderbolt is an irresistible weapon of truth, and that he wields against the coverer, the evil one who covers the streams of truth hidden below the earth. If those streams, those waters from below the earth were allowed to flow, men would be like gods. So the evil one, the adversary, prevents it. And Indra, the god of the triple heavens, the higher mental hemispheres, he wields the thunderbolt and eliminates the evil one. And the waters of truth, the rivers of truth, they do not flow downward, but they flow upwards. In the Vedic hymns, always words are used with such dexterity. Some absurdity is deliberately placed to make your mind work. How can it be? And then you see the truth. So here the waters are described as flowing upwards. They are the waters of consciousness. And man breaks out of his subconscious realms. His being emerges, and the next god to come is Varuna. Varuna is the god of the ocean. Ocean symbolizes infinitude of existence, wideness. So, with the advent of the truth consciousness streaming into him, the limited being of man expands and expands, and he becomes one with the infinite. No more shut up in the walls of his ego or desire or personality. He becomes one with the universe. And it is only when he is wide extended, enlarged, that the third God, he is called the Mitra, the God of love, the friend. And they care to emphasize that love, the divine love, can manifest only when man enlarges himself, when he widens himself. Varuna is also the god of purity, when man rises above the level of animal desire, above self-interest and self-concern, when he becomes wide, extended, then he is fit to receive the divine love, which binds him to every creature. And love gushes forth from him. And there are other gods. Into that we need not enter. But note that Indra, the god of the divine mind, he is the leader of what are called maruts, the life forces which have been purified and are helping the mind to gain and organize knowledge. That is a hint to future humanity that we have to master, purify and master our life emotions, our life energies before we can explore and gain control over the mental domains of knowledge and vision. It is an axiomatic truth with these seers that man cannot go beyond levels of consciousness unless he fills and fulfills the optimum at each level. I cannot exceed myself. Man cannot become a superman, for instance, unless man fulfills his term as man. All that is implicit in man, all the powers that are potential in man, they must be fully developed. Otherwise, the gods stand in the way and block your way. They say they don't give the password. They have the system of passwords. Unless you have fulfilled your role, you have played your part, there is no corner left unattended, you have become a full man, a deep, depth-wise, height-wise, breadth-wise. You will not be allowed to exceed your evolutionary dimension. You can't go and become a superman. They have these in picturesque legends and symbols, and they conceive of the goal of life, the aim of life, not as salvation, not as nirvana, cancelling yourself from the list of existence and disappearing into the blissful hole or into a void. No, that came much later. At the degeneration of the life curve of the Aryan civilization, other things appeared as a reaction, and they conceived of the reality as a void, as a zero, as a nihil, and they said there is no soul and there is no God. But that apart. The mystics or the leaders of humanity of which we are speaking, they say that the aim of life is perfection, fulfillment. There is a purpose in life, there is a destiny to be fulfilled, and that is to manifest God on earth. They speak significantly of how man is given one bowl, a large bowl by the universal architect, and he does ascesis, he does austerities. Austerity does not mean self-infliction of trouble, of pain on the body, denial of food, denial of sleep. No, it does not mean that. Ascesis, penance, austerity in this discipline means a gathering of energies, saving them from dissipation, concentrating them to achieve the object in view, a marshalling, a focusing, and a concentration and fixation of energies on the object, an organized life in which everything subserves a central purpose. And they say when man practices this discipline of an all-round perfection, he summons the aid of the artisans of immortality, the Dibhus, who are human beings who have risen to the status of gods by virtue of their past austerities and who are still present working for the benefit of man. And they help him to shape 4 bowls out of one. Man is born with one bowl, but with the help of the gods, he shapes 4 bowls out of one. And those 4 bowls are knowledge, strength, love, service. These are the 4 truths, 4 verities in which the consciousness flows. In each one of us, all these 4 streams are there indistinct. It is the purpose of culture, purpose of education, rightly given, purpose of spiritual discipline, to separate and sift these strands in our being and give shape to the element of knowledge, to the element of power, to the element of love, and to the element of work, service. So a 4-fold perfection of man, what is called an integral perfection, is the aim that is set for man by those early seers of humanity. They deliberately concealed this profound knowledge from the layman, from the laity, because they said this knowledge can be misused. So only one who is qualified, who has purified himself, gone over the lower desires of nature, he is entitled to share in this knowledge. And they speak of nature, physical nature, not as something alien, not as something tempting man, a snare. No. Nature, physical nature is the body of God, physical body of God. Just as the mind is the mental body. The biosphere is the life body. So the divine spirit assumes a number of bodies. In the Upanishads, which are the crown of the Vedas, there is mention how the external physical body which we see and with which we identify ourselves is only the most external body. Behind this physical self, there is the self of the life body. Around the physical body, overlooming the physical body, is the life body. Behind the life body and still bigger than the life body is the mental body. Still behind and still bigger is what is called the knowledge body or the causal body. Still behind is the bliss body. At the basis of everything, there is bliss. So at the most secret body is the bliss body, in which the soul lives. It is an dictum of this thought that delight, bliss, is at the root of existence. This whole universe has come into being on a surge of delight on the part of the cosmic, the universal, the divine being. In his evolution of delight, this world is thrown. And they say from ananda, from delight, from bliss is this world born. By bliss is this world maintained, and into bliss they pass. Who indeed could live but for this ether of bliss? And bliss is the essential principle. If we don't find bliss, very characteristic of our life today, it is because we have lost the art of life. We have forgotten the art of living. We have chosen to confine ourselves to this limited self organized around the ego, propelled by the desire, shutting ourselves in a small formation. And each time there is the impact of the universal life force, whether through individuals or through circumstances. The individual shrinks. He can't bear this impact. He shrinks, and we have the dualities of sensation, in pain, shrinking, fear. These are all foreign. Fear is a thing that is not characteristic or natural to the human soul. Fear is a contribution of the adversary, of the anti-God, because where there is a divine presence, where there is a divine love, there is joy, there is strength, there is confidence. And where the opposites are there, fear, distrust, apprehension, something has gone wrong. Man has limits himself, I and others. Actually, there is no compartment between me and what I call others. All are one divine presence, one divine self, posited in so many forms. In a celebrated passage, the seer says, "Verily, the wife is not dear because of the wife. The son is not dear because of the son, but because of the self." Translators translate it as the ego self, that man is selfish and he loves others because he loves himself. But that's not the truth. The real truth of the scriptures is the self is a capital self, is Atman. The one self that is manifest is there embodied in a million forms. And each time that self in this body recognizes the self in that body, it greets. And at a human level we feel it as a sense of affinity, developing into a sense of attraction and what we call love. But human love is not an end in itself. Human love is only a door opening into a divine love. Human love needs external excitations, external provocations and responses, recognition. Even when one loves, one expects a recognition. That one expects a response. If these things are not forthcoming, there is a resentment, there is anger. But where the love is pure, where the love is a divine love, there is no reason. It is called a causeless love. It gushes forth for its own sake. You cannot say why it is there. My teacher, the mother, used to say, one loves because one can't help loving. It's the nature of love to flow. There is no reason for it. And that's the love which is symbolized by the god Mitra, who ties all the gods, all humanity together in one fellowship. In the scheme of the Vedas, there is always this thrust towards unanimity, towards oneness. Common be your minds, common be your thoughts, common be your hearts, common be your meditations. Lead together. That is the substance of the last hymn of the Veda. The Veda is concerned not only with the spiritual pursuit of life, but with the perfection of every side of man. There are perceptions of the occult side of things, of what they call the subterranean regions. They speak of this whole cosmos as a septuple universe. It is a seven-planed cosmos. At the highest there is the world of existence, next to the world of consciousness, next to the world of delight, next to the world of light. Then comes the world of mind, the world of life, the world of matter. And they hint that's not the end. Below the physical there are other worlds, there are nether worlds. And an offshoot, another branch, a parallel branch of thought and tradition of the Veda, to the Vedas is the Tantras, which relate in a unique manner the universe and the individual. They take up the same theme, that this septuple, seven-planed existence, universe, is there reflected in a miniature form in man. In each individual, all the seven planes of existence, seven planes of consciousness stand organized. And in each human body, there are centers which are like windows opening on particular planes of existence. Seven centers corresponding to the seven planes of existence. And by activating that center, by opening that center in oneself, one can commune with that corresponding plane or world of consciousness. That is another philosophy, but that is also as old, as authentic as the Vedas. So there we are. The wisdom of the Vedas is essentially this, that this world is not a finished creation. God did not create this one day and stop. No, it is a continuing, a dynamic unrolling of the divine reality. The infinite, the eternal unrolls itself through time, through space. The eternal pours itself through the moments of time. The infinite self-limits itself in forms of space. Each plane of existence has its own time, has its own space. And there is no gulf between the individual man and the divine reality. What has created is also here. They expressly say, He created, and having created, He entered into it. And in that scheme, man occupies a premier position. They say when there are many legends, each emphasizing a particular truth. No legend should be taken as self-sufficient and entire. In one legend, for instance, they speak of the divine creator. He was alone, he was one, he desired to be many. So he creates the waters, and he creates the cow, the horse, he creates the gods, and then the gods ask the creator, where shall we live? Where is the habitation for us? So the creator creates the cow. The cow in this symbology represents light, intelligence, consciousness. The gods shake their heads. He creates a horse. Horse in this ancient symbolism represents power. Horsepower we call, power everywhere. The gods say no. Then he creates man, at which the gods are thrilled and they say, well done indeed, well done. And they enter into man. Man is the superb specimen of creation, and in him dwell the gods. In this nine-gated city sits the dwarf god, that is the human soul. He is developing and developing. And as he develops, in man is the meeting ground between matter and spirit, between science and spirituality, between nature and God. Man is the breach in which all unity shall be founded. Man is the promise, and the Vedas are one voiced, unanimous, in lauding the role of man as the potential God. I have done, and I would invite questions. I would like to know something about the ashram of Sri Aurobindo, from which I come, the philosophy and the yoga of that place. Well, Sri Aurobindo ashram is now 50 years old, south of India, 100 miles south of Adyar, the headquarters of the International Theosophical Society, and it started in 1926. You will be interested to know that the ashram started when Sri Aurobindo retired completely from public life. There were about 20 people then who had followed him into the wilderness, political wilderness, from India, British India, where he had led the revolt against the British power. Today we are about 1700 people permanently staying there over an area of about 15 miles, not one campus, but interspersed with the town, the villages and so on. Things have grown according to the need. We come from about 20 or 25 countries, and it is a spiritual community devoted to the exploration of human consciousness with a view to changing it into a growing divine consciousness. Life is so organized that all the members who are admitted there are maintained by the ashram, and they do not have to earn their living. They are expected to devote all their energies, physical, mental, spiritual, to the higher quest. And each one consecrates his life energies in part to the work of the collective society. It is an indispensable part of our teaching that God is to be realized not there in heaven but here on earth. Spiritual perfection, spiritual realization is in the measure in which you manifest spiritual qualities, divine qualities in day-to-day life. So we have a large community where all the fields of life are organized. Workshops, farms, schools, colleges, printing press, gardens, farms, as I said, bakery, laundry, everything that is necessary for decent modern living. And each one of us devotes 1/3 of our time for work, disinterested, non-egoistic work as part of our yogic discipline, learning to work without self-interest as a labor of love, consecrating ourselves, pouring ourselves as offering to God. The rest of the time, members devote for development of their minds, opening the windows, broadening their minds by study, by writing, by holding periodic group classes, centers of study. Not only the writings of Sri Aurobindo and the Mother, which themselves are immense, but also the spiritual literature of the world. And we have a center of education where we have about 700 students from different parts of the world, where education is given free, but education quite different from what is given elsewhere in the world. It is a child-based education. That is, the child must be consulted in its own growth. There is a friendship, a commonality between the teacher and the taught. Each child is observed, encouraged, and seen what are its aptitudes, and they are encouraged. We have abolished the systems of degrees and diplomas and tests. But there is an utter freedom, what is called free progress system, where records are kept of the daily progress of children, but not periodical tests. And physical education is made a very active part of this curriculum, because in our philosophy, the physical body has as much claim towards divine perfection as the soul. In the spirit of the ancient teaching that the body is the tabernacle of the spirit, the body is the temple of God, there is a system combining asanas, postures, exercises, breathing techniques, whereby the consciousness in the body is awakened, endurance in the body is built up. Each cell is sought to be made conscious of, so that I am to touch that subject tomorrow. It is the body should no longer owe allegiance to the law of death. More of it tomorrow. And there is a lot of encouragement to the development of the aesthetic, the emotional side, the love, the devotion, the emotions through art, music, drama, and devotional outpourings. And all these, there is no set system. There is a broad philosophy, a broad teaching that man has to evolve. He has to develop his consciousness into a divine consciousness, eliminate non-divine qualities from himself, encourage the soul qualities, find the true center in oneself by interiorization, what we call the psychic being, the soul. That's the first capital step. By meditation, by concentration, by contemplation, systematically done, one plunges inward and learns to find, to awake to, and become conscious of the divine center in oneself, the center of love and unity. Once that is done, then it is not a successive operation, but a simultaneous. The mind is sought to be silenced by processes of concentration and meditation, controlled and made open to the workings of faculties from the higher levels of consciousness above the intellect, so that the mind receives the workings of intuition, illumination, inspiration and other faculties, and the mind broadens. And there is a systematic attempt at expanding the universalization, the cosmicization of consciousness. So there is always a threefold endeavor in the personal life of a seeker: interiorization, universalization and spiritualization, all with a view to develop the human faculties to their utmost, so that the highest level of consciousness open to man, the level of truth mind, the level of the gnosis, that starts working in man. Sri Aurobindo's essential perception is that man has arrived at a crucial point in his evolutionary development. He has to go beyond humanity and add a divine mind which will change the entire character of life. Our society is one which is working towards this ideal. It accepts that the present economic structure of society, rivalry, competition, money economy, is not one which will conduce to the development of the kingdom of God on earth. There is perfect equality, no private wealth. Nobody earns money in our ashram. No, I don't own money. I am maintained, I am sustained, I work for it. I don't need money. Money has no meaning in our society. And all are equal. There are no rich and poor. There are no white and black. or brown. There are no, men and women like that. There are men, women, but all are treated as equal members of children of God. So this perfect equality of status, opportunity, absence of social hierarchy, and absence of competition, that releases many tensions in life. And there is a corporate effort to exceed human limitations and grow into a freedom which looks towards the heights of the spirit. That is the ashram. Having come to this stage of about 1700, which was found to be the optimum in one organization, there is a spillover. That is, another organization has been started that is called the Planetary City of Aurobindo, which is started 7 miles from Pondicherry, where people are invited from all parts of the world who are prepared to break out from the past moorings, accept a society where there will be no private wealth, absolute equality, and ideal of human unity. We already have about 500 people from different parts of the world, about 100 Americans, 120 Frenchmen, the rest from different parts of the world. They are developing. Already they have got about 2,000 acres of land, split into 20 settlements, each with its own character. But what is important and which I want you to know is whether in our ashram or in Aurobindo, there is no spiritual or administrative head. It is a decentralized kind of democracy. We have no boss to give orders. So all are learning to develop their inner leadership, guidance, and get together for self-government. It is a new experiment in collective living, spiritual idealism, harnessed to material welfare, accepting the challenge of life. Above all institutionalized religions, there are no Hindus or Christians or Muslims or Buddhists or Jews there. All are members of Aurobindo or ashram. We call each other by the first name. We don't even use the surnames. So this is the general background, and this is the ideal we have before us, which we are trying to practice in the measure of our sincerity, capacities. There are failures, there are dropouts. That's the story of every institution. But we have been there for 50 years. In this country I have been visiting and mixing with number of New Age communities, particularly in Northwest America. I have had occasion to meet them in a conference of about 45 communities. What is that, Brighton Bush or somewhere. And I was really enthused, whatever the limitations. There is a thrust towards the future. They are not satisfied with the present limitations. Well, there may be excesses, there may be drugs, there may be free sex, but these are all aberrations. But the central thrust is towards the future. They are looking, the young people of this country, the women of this country, I have seen as a force looking towards the future, which you will not find in any other country on this organized basis. And I have been emphasizing to them that to build a new community for sake of a community does not help. It dies with the founder. But if one has a spiritual commitment, before one becomes a member, before one starts a community, such a community will thrive. A new community is required because the old community does not give freedom to develop an individual consciousness towards a divine consciousness, individual consciousness towards a universal consciousness. All our taboos and institutions are barriers in externalizing oneself. Just as nationalism today is a barrier towards a world family, similarly our institutions of economic competition, rivalry, private wealth, these are all, and not to mention others, are standing in the way. They had value in the old society. But today when things are developing, they have become barriers. So we are in that line looking towards a new future, a new society. And my tours, visits to this country are really to share and to learn. I learn much here.
Some of you may have read different utopias, starting with Plato's Republic and on through Thomas More and others. Some of you may be aware of a number of different experimental communities that have actually tried to put utopian ideas into practice. Rarely have they lasted 50 years, even with dropouts. Other question?
Yes, you drew references to deities such as Veda as well as Guru that has expanded awareness. Within the Vedas, in particular the ninth mandala, when you run across the deity Samapamana, could you speak on that? On what we could relate Samapamana Soma to more abstract love or expanded awareness or divine awareness?
The point that I was making was that the Vedic gods or the deities are not gods of the past, of a historic past, but they are of a historic present. As long as man lives, they are truths. It is the power of love that is called Mitra. It is the power of purity and wideness that is called Varuna. It is the power of aspiration that is called Agni. It is the power of wisdom that is called Brihaspati, and so on. And in their scheme, there is a sequential arrangement that we have to develop a keen thirst for a higher consciousness, which is the divine, before one can arrive at it. And they say, feed the fire with all stuff from life. All our thoughts, all our feelings, all our emotions, they must be geared towards feeding this central thrust for a divine consciousness or a divine status. That is, life must be organized. And then they say, you have to extend yourself. And how do you extend yourself? They said, first purify yourself. Purify is free yourself from desire. Desire of lower natures. To appropriate what belongs to others. To possess things. To go own things. Instead of being myself owned by God, why do I want to own this universe? In the Isha Upanishad, which is one of the earliest Upanishads, a part of the Veda, the first verse itself says, all this is for habitation by the Lord. Do not steal what belongs to others. Renounce, and renouncing, enjoy. They give the clue that you can enjoy life, you can share in the cosmic enjoyment of life only when you give up your desire for possession. Desire limits your capacities. Tena tyaktena bhunjithaha. Renounce and enjoy. So first you have to give up desire. Your self-centering, center of reference in the ego, that must go before one can have an extended awareness. If we try to extend our awareness before purifying ourselves, what happens is we are aggrandizing our own ego. What happened in the case of Hitler? What happened in the case of Mussolini, Stalin? They honestly thought perhaps that what they were doing was good for the world. They were only extending their ego, their false self. So we have first to discard the false self and find out the true self of love, where we feel unity with others, and from that point extend ourselves, widen ourselves. That is why they insist on purity, purifying ourselves. Purity is not an external purity, but an inner psychological purity. The names may change in different mythology, different spiritual traditions. The names are different, but the truths are the same. Whether the Egyptian, Greek, the names are the powers are pretty much the same, but the names are different. In Greek, the change from the physical to the psychological stopped at some level. In the Vedas, they extended to the spiritual level. The rest is a theme by itself. Each god to be taken and analyzed and shown how he is still relevant to in our day-to-day life today. That is a theme by itself. And I think at the end of a talk, it is difficult to compress all those things.
Anyone who studies those things realizes there are a number of rather large books. And after you've read the books, you still have to sit down and meditate to see more deeply into it. That probably doesn't answer your question, maybe you can talk with him afterwards.
Throughout history, men have described religious and spiritual thought, the existence of evil gods and evilness, as a source of evil. You mentioned in the talk. I was wondering what problem did the people you spoke about, did they feel or experience? What problem did they come up with? The solution was evilness or evil gods.
The Vedas also particularly mention the existence of the titans, the evil ones. Only they take care to describe them as the elder gods. Elder gods, that is, their perception is there is nothing in this universe which is not derived from the divine being. The gods are emanations of the divine put out as cosmic functionaries to build and sustain and lead the world, universe, in their respective spheres. The occult tradition, whether Indian or Midwest, Mid-East or wherever it is that certain gods rebelled against the divine will. They constituted themselves into independent gods, independent beings with their own will against the central will of the Creator. And they are what are called the progenitors of the evil army, the hosts, the black hosts. And that problem has been there from the beginning. There is the army of light, there is the army of darkness. The evil one, the antichrist or the anti-god, they are there in all traditions. And it is in the being of man that they have their battlefield. Each one of us has in his power to allow these evil ones to extend their reign or to limit them, to the extent that we allow ourselves to indulge in what are called, the anti-spiritual activities. We are supporting and aiding and abetting the evil ones. The reverse also is true. So in the Gita and in other Indian scriptures, the responsibility is put on man. He has to decide how far the bright ones or the darker ones will rule his life. And as their empire in men's hearts gets less and less, their hold on the universe also will decrease. We are at a particular point in the human history today where the battle has been joined. The evil ones are doing their worst, but the grace also, the armies of light also are active. But I belong to the army of optimists, and I am happy on that account. I don't believe in any of these forecasts or prophecies of doom, of earthquakes and conflagrations and everything coming to no, nothing of the kind is going to happen. Man has come to stay. The earth is too important in the cosmic valuation, and despite all that is threatened, we will survive. Truth will be established, and God's reign will be unveiled. May not be today, maybe after 100 years, after 200 years, but I personally believe that from 2000 AD, something new will start and much of the old will have gone.